Welcome, everybody. We are back with To Become Family. We're your hosts, Renzo and Monica Ortega. We are the authors of Lovemaking, and in today's episode, we're going to go over the 5 lies about sex that are destroying your marriage. Well, hopefully not destroying, but they're definitely not making things easier. They definitely hurt our marriage, and a good thing that we know all the truth. So now, sex is always great. She loves it all the time.
And marriage is perfect.
Aha! That's why we do this.
Every day. That's why we're here. We are the experts.
We are joking. If this is your first time here, we are joking. We know we are not experts. We are very much non-experts, but we are still willing to share all of the ways that we're not experts, and hopefully that in a way that you will benefit. If you're watching now, when this was first released, it is now January, and we are hopefully on our way back or have returned yesterday from Seek. It would be my first time speaking at Seek. I did a breakout session in Fort Worth. So if you're joining us from there, I'm sorry, because this is a completely different topic than what I talked about at Fort Worth. But we're happy you're here. And if you are a new listener, we're happy that you're listening in or that you're watching us on YouTube. So now for the 5 things that you believe about sex, even though you really shouldn't.
Okay, and here's the first one. Sex is more for the individual pleasure than the relational benefits.
Yep, that's what I always say. Every time she says no, I say, hey, remember, it's for my individual pleasure. Nothing to do with our marriage.
That works well every time, actually. It's very convincing.
More play of that foreplay.
That was clever. I've never heard that
That's why
one
you
before.
married me. That's why you married me.
Okay, so even though a lot of people wouldn't say this one out loud, I don't think, and I think at some level people...
If you say this out loud, we need to do a different video for you.
You might not get anything out of this. What
Keep
you're saying
the inside things inside.
But I think that most people would, at least at some level, be like, oh yeah, of course it's for the relational elements. It's for the relationship to bond us and to help us as a couple. But to some extent, there's still some level of selfishness and that can come into play.
Yeah, and I think these are things that if you don't readily root out, they're things that you're going to believe in your marriage, and you're going to bring them into marriage without realizing you're actually still believing those things. So as much as you might be like, well, this is good for our marriage, your best arguments might be about how this actually benefits the two of us. To some extent, if we believe that it's all about our pleasure, or that it needs to always be pleasurable, and it always needs to hit a certain, it needs to be a 10 on the hotness scale. I don't know. Sorry. But if you believe that it needs to be certain, it has to have some certain context of pleasure around it, and that it's all about you, it makes sex within marriage very difficult to do well, because the movies and the romance novels and TV shows, everything is lied to you about what it needs to be like in marriage, because it needs to be a very different thing than what those things may have taught you.
And I think those little lies help us or tempt us to hyper-focus on what we're getting out of the sexual part of our relationship. So while you're still like, yes, this is for the good of our relationship, if sex isn't happening frequently or the way that you want it, then typically we still will turn inward and be like, I'm not getting what I need because we're not having sex. No, go ahead.
I just know that there's also there's a temptation to judge how healthy a relationship is not based on how often you have sex, but based on how pleasurable and enjoyable and in personal enjoyment you get out of the sexual part of your relationship. And that's something that we need to be careful, especially if we are a Catholic couple, if we're a Christian couple, and we're trying to live out what a biblical marriage would look like. I think allowing those secular lies to come in can really erode the type of relationship you have.
And that's not to say that sex isn't supposed to be pleasurable. It is.
I hate it all the time.
More sarcasm if you're new here.
Sorry. There's the laugh. That was a slow burn. There, she got it.
Ooh, okay. So, gosh, you distracted me now. I think that the temptation, again, this is where the lies creep in, is if we're focused on our own self-pleasure instead of bringing pleasure to our partner, bringing pleasure to our spouse, and making sure that they're having a good time and that they're enjoying it, that they're not only physically comfortable, but emotionally comfortable, and everything is pleasurable, but the whole experience, we should be focused more on the other than on ourselves. So again, this isn't that it's not supposed to be pleasurable. It is, and we should be other focused. And typically, if you're both other focused, then you yourself will also be enjoying it.
Number two, you might believe that sex is a need and that you need it in order to be healthy and or complete. And it's just not a need. In the same way that like water
Yes.
and food is a need, I think it's important that we remind ourselves that depending on like how you desire things. So like not all men, that is a myth to believe that all men believe and desire sex all the time. It's more like 80% of men. But if you fall in that 80% and you have that kind of desire all the time, to believe that it is a physical need like food and water and I was trying to think of something funny to say. But like food and water, if you believe it's a need like that, I think that's something, again, that could slowly erode your marriage because you feel like your wife is not actually meeting your needs as their beloved. And you feel like, oh, this is part of her duty because I have certain needs and she needs to be able to meet them. And I think that's something we need to catch really quickly early on and just say, no, this is not a need in the same manner that those other things might be.
Yes. So, like, no human being needs sex to survive. And so, culture and even some more of like the fringe influences have kind of crept in and saying that like no, women should, this is primarily like the stigma is that women should meet the needs of their husbands because if they have this sexual arousal and sexual desire that needs to go somewhere, otherwise they're going to go elsewhere to find some way to satisfy this need, some way to meet this need. And I think that that is really derogatory to both the man and the woman because, like, men, you have self-control, you have free will, you are not, you don't need to be motivated in the same way as hunger as you are with your sexual desires. Like, that doesn't need to be met. And if you have fallen for that lie, like, then that has taken away a lot of your dignity, your strength, and your will. And then also for women, that has been really degrading and derogatory for women too, because if the man is demanding this and she feels like that must be true because she's hearing it elsewhere as well as from the man that she loves most and respects and trusts most, then that can be taking away from the fullness of the sexual act and just, again, bringing it back to the physical pleasure part.
Right. And I think we can have a tendency, this is more of a culture, like overall cultural thing. Like we tend to have we have a tendency to make comfort and pleasure idols. Mm-hmm. So like we tend to idolize them. So like whatever we do, like for example, like if we work really hard, we work really hard so that we can reduce the amount of suffering in the future because we want to be comfortable. And in the same way, like in our marriage, like we see that if we are comfortable and we get the most amount of pleasure in our marriage, we see that like, oh, this is a healthy thing. And if we put having sex as one of those needs, like I need that in order to have a pleasurable marriage, I need that in order to have a comfortable marriage, we then make sex an idol within our marriage. And I think that's dangerous because like there's going to be periods of time in your marriage where you can't engage in intercourse. And if you come from more of like a secular perspective, like that, if you use contraception, use condoms, you use the pill, like there really doesn't seem to be a time where you ever need to not be able to have sex. But like even if you do those things, like if your spouse is sick, if there are things going on in your marriage that like that you need to handle, those should be times where you are not having sex because you're handling the more important things. But if you genuinely believe like, well, no, sex is one of those needs that is top tier compared to those other things, you might struggle to actually fix the more difficult things in your marriage. Just things that are a bigger priority, like you may not prioritize fixing those things because you feel like, oh no, sex has to be top of that list. And like Monica said, like that is reducing humans and reducing ourselves to the level of animals in the sense that like they follow their passions. And we as humans, we have intellect and will, and we can choose the greater. We can choose the greater good. Like in the movie Home, do you remember where the character, I'm sorry, I don't know if you'll remember this. I'm sure our listeners will. Like when the character runs towards the danger.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? So like that's one of the abilities of like he became the leader because he wasn't like the other boob who ran away, but like no, he chose to run towards the danger. Like as humans, we have that ability. We're not governed by our passions and our fears and things like that. Like we have the ability to be courageous because we could choose in fear to still do the good thing anyway. But if we say like no, sex is a need and I need that no matter what, and I can't say no to that because it's a physical need, we are reducing our dignity and our ability to to choose the good, which a lot of times is to choose our spouse despite what we might want and despite our passions.
Yeah. And so I will argue that every marriage does not need sex, but every marriage needs intimacy. And so I think sometimes that can also get confused because sex can be one of the most intimate expressions of love and intimacy, right? Like sex is absolutely intimate, but intimacy is not just sex. And so sometimes the most loving and intimate thing that you can do for your spouse and for the good of your marriage is to actually say no to sex and say yes to these things that have the priority, or even just your spouse's comfort or well-being, because they might be saying no at this time because their needs are greater than this opportunity for sex. Oops. Okay, and I jumped ahead a little bit to number 3. Sex is the only or primary form of intimacy in a marriage.
Which is just not true. And I know some people might believe that, but there is jujitsu. And
actually, that's it.
Those
are the only 2.
In our marriage. Either we're physical with clothes on or off, but we're physical no matter what.
That's it. That's how you know. That's actually all you need to know. You can turn off this episode now. No, but I think that because God designed sex so well and for our pleasure and for our union and for procreation, and like there's so much goodness that comes out of sex, we can disorder that because it is so good. But that doesn't mean that it is the ultimate good all the time, every day, in every circumstance.
In every room.
In every room, in every...
Continue.
No, it's fine.
Yes,
anyways,
all positions, everywhere.
That was a jujitsu reference.
All types of gravity. Sorry. Keep going. It's not enough.
I'm so embarrassed. Okay. And I think, though, that because it's so well reserved, like it belongs only in marriage, and like we've saved for that, and it's like it's so very, very good that we can again lose our sense of like will and reason and think like, well, that's the primary good, that's the ultimate good, that's the best thing, so we should be always striving and moving in that direction, without like discernment and taking a look at what are the circumstances, what's the situation, how is my spouse feeling, how is our family doing, how's the overall health and well-being of our relationship and our children and our finances, and all the things that come into play into like living a whole marriage. If we just like hyper focus and like narrow in just on this part of our relationship, then we're missing a lot of the intimacy that marriage is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. I agree with everything you said.
There you go. Done and done.
Ooh, number 4. This is like on the flip side of what we've been saying, that some people might believe that sex is not necessary for a long-term committed relationship. Because a lot of times people might believe everything that we just said in the last 3 things and may be like, well, you know what? Yeah, actually sex isn't that necessary. We actually don't need it. And because you don't need it at all, like you can go into marriage and be married for 20, 30 years. And like, you know what? We don't really need to have sex anymore because we are so committed. We are so in love. We are so intimate. And I think that is also a myth that you have to be careful that it may be eroding within your relationship, because though sex is not a need within the relationship, and though it is not the only form of intimacy that we have, it is the closest form of intimacy that mirrors the type of intimacy, when rightly understood and rightly ordered, the type of intimacy that we could have with God. And if you don't understand that whole idea, we have other episodes on this and the understanding of theology of the body. But because it is something that that is so good, it is something that you should strive to be able to engage in with your beloved. Again, we are trying to say it is not an idol, not something that you strive to do all the time because it is the greatest thing ever. But it's also not something that you could just throw away and be like, well, it's a superfluous thing in our relationship. We don't actually need this at all. We can't throw the baby out with the bathwater with this. That is another phrase.
Thank you.
Don't throw babies anywhere. But you don't. But we want to. So we want to have sex in its rightly ordered place. And truthfully, it should be something that couples strive to do when rightly ordered, as much as they can.
Yeah, because the threat with this, like believing this lie, is that couples can then turn into just best friends, or they can go into this like roommate phase, and they can be two ships passing in the night, another phrase that people say. But like you can lose the element of what makes your marriage different from other relationships. So while yes, your spouse can absolutely be your best friend, your favorite person, and you are like coexisting together and doing this life together, and there are definitely seasons or weeks or days or months where like it's very busy, but sex is a part of your marriage that is different from any other relationship that you have, that reminds you of the fullness of the sacrament that you're in. So this total gift of self, this total giving and receiving, it's like the language of our bodies to express that covenant that we made for one another. And that's really also important to do when you are able to. So again, there are certainly circumstances where like there are other things that take priority, but that doesn't mean that sex shouldn't also be a goal of yours, again, rightly ordered, to re-express these vows, to renew these vows, to show that commitment to one another, to have that bonding experience, to make sure that you're all like the whole of you is remembering that this is your person, this is your vocation. And
well, yeah, like you said, the renewing of vows within the Catholic framework, the we express with our bodies what we said with our words on our wedding day. So we believe that every time you engage in sex with your spouse, so you're actually renewing your marital vows. So what more important thing could there be for us as a couple to do than to remind ourselves what we vowed to one another on our wedding day? And we do that in the act of sex. So it's not just a thing we could throw away, but it's also not a thing that we should idolize. Like we shouldn't idolize the vows that we said, but we should actually be doing them. And then we should be renewing them and then also doing our vows as well.
And number 5, our last point, is that sexual autonomy and individual desire is more important than relational harmony.
What we mean by that is that wanting sex however you want it, when you want it, and being able to have it done the way you want to do it all the time is not more important than the relational priority, or prioritizing the relationship itself. So there are people that ask in different forums, in different Catholic Facebook groups, so like, if I want to have sex when I want it, is that more important than what my spouse might want? Or if I want to do certain positions, or if I want to do certain things. And none of that ever takes priority over your relationship with your beloved. Because again, sex is if it's a renewal of the covenant vows that you gave to each other on your wedding day, like it should be something that strengthens the relationship. And if your spouse does not feel like engaging in sex, and I know we're kind of opening up a can of worms towards the end of a video, that's something that you should take into account, and you guys should try to discuss together so that you could be on the same page. You should never engage in anything around sex or within sex that harms the dignity of your beloveds. Just because you want to try certain particular things, if that's something that takes away from their dignity, that should not be something that's engaged in the marital act, meaning sex. I haven't said marital act yet.
Yeah,
just said it. Yeah.
Fair. Okay, fair. And I think the distinction between this point and number 1 is that this is really where healthy communication and intimacy meets the couple and like the desires, because a lot of couples will just find themselves in a stalemate when it comes to this. So there might be one spouse that wants sex more often and is like borderline demanding it, or maybe even actually demanding it. One spouse might be using sex as like a bargaining chip and saying like, not until you do X, Y, and Z, and like show me that you care, show me, like, and kind of using it as a manipulation tool. But then even within that, there are certain acts that one spouse might feel uncomfortable or nervous about, and turn it down. And that's all of these are opportunities for communication, as far as like, why do you want this so often? Why are you saying no so often? Why is this making you nervous? Why are you uncomfortable with this? And being open to being curious and actually hearing what the other person has to say, respecting it, and then like going from there, because that doesn't mean that everything is automatically a no either. There's definitely goodness in like exploration and trying new things and being intimate and close and vulnerable with one another. But that's kind of the point, is that like it can't just sit in its sex box. Like it has to also be a part of your relationship. So if somebody feels unsafe or uncomfortable or nervous, it's probably not just because of what's happening in the bedroom or wherever this is happening, but because of something else that the whole relationship could benefit from open communication about.
So those are the 5 lies that we think that can people believe that could erode their relationship without them even realizing it. If you want to learn more about this, we actually did write a book together. It's called Lovemaking: How to Talk About Sex with Your Spouse, a guide for everyday Catholics. We wrote it together. It's been both of our voices. The same kind of jokes I made today you would hear in the book. If you liked today's episode, please like, comment, and subscribe. Leave a review if you are listening to us on Apple or Spotify. If you are here from Seek or from any of the other conferences or things that we did, please say hi to us, because we don't know if we actually made a difference. And it's always good to hear that, like, hey,
and welcome
you at least remember who we are.
And welcome if this is your first time tuning into one of these types of episodes. We're really happy that you're here. Stick around, go listen to some older episodes, and we will see you at the next episode.